Hello, welcome to Meet Me at the Movies. Noel T. Manning II here, spending time with you talking cinema as always, and really appreciate you taking your time out of your day to engage with us. And whether we're talking with filmmakers, reviewing films, exploring what's on the horizon, or talking to those who write about films, we just appreciate you and your choices to come and spend with us. So thank you. Really happy today to have the co-authors of the fifth edition of Film, Form, and Culture. I've got my copy here. I'm really happy to have this. And I was telling Robert Kolker that I've got some of his earlier versions back behind me on my shelf. And I've been able to share that with some students at Gardner-Webb University. So I'm glad to actually be speaking to the man behind those editions. And then Marsha, that I know, Marsha Gordon, I've known Marsha through the North Carolina Film Critics Association, and we've communicated via email and other forms, over the years. But the first time we've actually had a chance to, I think, talk virtually face to face. So Marsha, good to see you as well.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Really appreciate both of you being here to talk about your work on this book, and also talk about just the love of cinema. And I'll start off with that. How did you both engage in this love of film, and maybe the background on how that started and how it nurtured itself within you? And we'll start, Robert, we'll start with you.
Well, I guess it started seriously during the time that I was doing my master's work at Syracuse University, and the local art cinema showed a season of films by Luis Buñuel. And I noticed in watching these films that there was a continuity of theme and style, just like the literature that I was studying. And it sort of triggered an interest in finding out what this means. I had before just taken film as movies as they come, one at a time. And here was an example of continuity and resonance and depth. And then a little later, when I was writing my dissertation on William Blake in London, I was spending my evenings at the National Film Theatre and enjoying them more than my mornings at the British Museum. So it sort of grew from there.
Wonderful. And Marsha, what about you?
Well, I have a kind of different origin story. I grew up in the San Fernando Valley of Los Angeles, outside of where so many movies are made. And my mom loved movies. My grandmother loved movies. Watched a lot of movies on television growing up. I'm one of those people from the generation that remembers the annual Wizard of Oz on television and everyone gathering around. But more than that, I remember as a teenager, starting as a very young teenager, every time I went to the mall, which was more often than I would probably like to admit, because that's kind of that was the culture of the San Fernando Valley, there was someone handing out invitations to go to free preview screenings. And so I went to movies sometimes once a week that were unreleased, and I had to fill out the comment card. Did you like the ending? Was this funny? Would you tell your friends to go see it? So I was a test audience for all of my teenage years. And I thought this was the way people saw movies. I had no idea until I moved out of California that it's like, no, actually people pay to go to movies and they're finished. So I don't know how you ever attribute where you develop your love and interest, but I certainly saw a lot of movies as a young person. And then when I went to University of Maryland for my PhD, Bob was my professor. So This is part of what makes this textbook so special for me, is it's been getting to spend some intellectual time with Bob, who's writing and who's, thinking about film I've long admired.
I love that. I would definitely say that your path to loving films was not like everyone else in the U.S. or around the world. So you're very rare and unique, and congratulations to you on that, because that's, getting a chance to see those early cuts of films, I think lot of fun. And now with the advent of technology, people can go back and see some of those alternate takes for sure. Well, let's talk about your collaboration. You mentioned that, Marsha, that you got a chance to study under Robert and learn from him, and talk about this collaboration. How did this collaboration happen on this fifth edition?
Well, I think Bob should probably start by talking about the origins of the textbook and the first edition.
Yeah, like 20 years ago, first edition.
Yes, it was a long time and many versions. It started as an experiment to include with the text a DVD of moving images and text along with the written text. And it sort of evolved from there. When it came to doing the fifth edition, I really wanted to have a voice of someone currently active in teaching. I've been retired for a number of years. And Marsha was my one and only choice.
Oh, I love that.
Well, and I will say, one of the things that's been interesting about this process is I remember very much the first time I touched the manuscript. Here we have this manuscript and we are going to take it apart, pull things out, start adding things. I mean, I'm sure you remember this, Bob. Every change I wanted to make, I would write a comment. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? What if we did this? I was so tentative, right? I was so nervous about doing anything. And Bob was like, just do it. Just get in there and get your hands dirty and do it. And I slowly started being, more comfortable with, saying okay, I'm going to delete these couple of paragraphs and bring a new film in here, or I think we need to go a different direction here. And that was an interesting process to go through. And Bob was very, he's a very direct writer, and he's also a very direct collaborator. So he would always say no, I don't think that's going to work. But for the most part, he was like, great, let's do it. It's okay to bring Wonder Woman in and talk about it in the lineage of melodrama and as part of this, very popular genre of the moment that too will go through a genre cycle and be gone soon enough. And so it was a really fun process of batting ideas back and forth, and then really just reading each other's writing, because we both did a lot of new writing for this edition, and then read each other's writing and built on that. So
that's wonderful. And Robert, you mentioned, Marsha, you mentioned Wonder Woman as a great example of something that's relatively fresh and new in the context of film. So Robert, you started 20 plus years ago with that first edition. We're now in the fifth. So at what point during the process over the years do you realize, okay, now's the time to update this? Is there a particular moment for you that it's ready to move on to something else for this book, or an iteration of this book?
It was necessary to take into consideration new media, most important streaming, which is now I think, most important way that people get their movies. And even more important is an outlet for women directors, which is still not the case in commercial theatrical cinema. So we needed that. I also needed to expand the global cinema section. And for that, I really needed Marsha's help in getting the full scope of those films.
Well, I think it's very interesting because one of the challenges of an introductory textbook, which is what this is, right? So even though I think it's written in a way that anybody who wants to learn more about film would find this a pleasure to read, and that's actually all due to Bob's model. He's a beautiful writer, an elegant writer about film. This doesn't read to me like a textbook. It's not dry. It's not just informational, but nor does it assault you we hope with like, here are 72 films you've never seen or heard of and 53 directors. We really tried to strike a balance between being expansive and pushing some of the categories of film that we didn't address as much, or that Bob didn't address as much in the last edition, but also not just dropping a bunch of stuff that's incomprehensible. So we tried to, with each kind of new individual director we brought in, to really talk about a film, at least by that director, to give it, to give some coherence and a sense of comprehension for a reader who may not have encountered that work before, and hopefully to make them want to see a movie, right? That's the goal, is to get people to want to see movies. So, why we greatly expanded the global cinema section. I mean, now we have Nigeria, Senegal, Burkina Faso, South Korea, Japan, India, Belgium, Iran. It is so far from comprehensive, right? It's just a trickle of films representing these national cinemas, in addition to, France and Italy and England. So it's always a little bit of part for the whole, but the hope is that we've done enough in each of these areas that anyone teaching this textbook would feel like they have a lot of avenues to film selections that are outside of just being produced in the United States, which, the textbook is primarily focused on.
Yep. I appreciate, as you mentioned, this is a film that it's a book that is accessible. It does cover film history, international cinema, genre studies, explores filmmakers, both the styles that certain filmmakers may have, the process itself. It really covers the spectrum. And so I want to ask you this from a standpoint of film scholars and film lovers yourselves. Were there personal sections of this text that really you just absolutely enjoyed being a part of? Is there one that you said, okay, without a doubt, this is going to be in there. I'm not going to deliberate. This is going to be in there.
Yeah, Marsha really pushed me to look more closely at Spike Lee, a filmmaker whose work I knew, but not with any depth. And there's a great deal of depth and a lot to be said. And due to Marsha's insistence, I said it. And it was an interesting and enjoyable piece of research and writing.
I think what was most important to me in the chapter, we have these chapters on the storytellers of film, where we break down all of the different roles in the film industry. So we demystify, what's a production designer? What does a composer do? And then we have a chapter on acting, and we talk about the history of performance styles and the way it evolves over time. And then the big chapter is the one on the director. And that's the one that in many ways I cared the most about, really getting my hands dirty in and rethinking the structure of, in part because I felt like it was really important when we talk about the evolution of cinema to work women's contributions into that history. So, for example, Alice Guy Blanchet and Lois Weber, two very early, 1890s, early 1900s women directors, that's part of the story of film history. When we talk about the history of the studio era now, we talk about Dorothy Eisner, Ida Lupino, and Alfred Hitchcock. And Lupino and Eisner were the only women working for making films in Hollywood in this time period. Eisner was the only one working in the studio system in the kind of 30s to 20s, late 20s to 40s. And of course, Hitchcock is one of the great auteurs, but their cases are very interesting within that. And again, in terms of thinking about the arc of film history, someone like Oscar Micheaux, an early pioneer Black filmmaker, I felt very strongly that he should exist in the chronology alongside D.W. Griffith. And this leads through the post-studio auteurs, where there's, of course, Stanley Kubrick, because that Kubrick has always been Bob's great cinematic passion. Scorsese, and Spike Lee. Now that's the kind of unit. And then finally, when we talk about multimedia contemporary auteurism, we talk about Julie Dash, who works very independently, and Ava DuVernay, who has been a powerful maker across media, making streaming documentaries for Netflix, making big star-laden historical films and fantasy films, working as a producer, and also working as a kind of a cultural pioneer in terms of thinking about giving women and people of color access to behind the camera roles on set, in film and television. And so that was the chapter I felt like I really want to figure out a way to get this right, the kind of telling of this historical narrative.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you both for sharing those thoughts. We are joined right here on Meet Me the Movies with Robert P. Kolker and also Marsha Gordon, and the book is Film, Form, and Culture, the 5th edition. And I'm really happy to have both co-authors with us right here on Meet Me at the Movies. We're going to take a quick intermission. We're going to come back, talk more with these authors and about their love of film and about this book. So stick around.
Won't you come and meet me at the movies? Won't you come and watch a flick?
Hey, I'm David Allen, back as Armchair Quarterback host.
I'm Guy Suttle from C19 TV Sports.
And I'm Rob Roop from KTCBroadcasting.com.
What's in store on the gridiron? Each week we look at all 4 Cleveland County High School football teams: Burns, Crest, Kings Mountain, and Shelby. We will look at what happened the week before and look ahead at what's coming up this week.
And we'll also discuss ACC, SEC, and Gardner-Webb college football.
And of course, the NFL and those Carolina Panthers.
So don't miss another great season of football right here on Armchair Quarterback on C19 TV and online at c19.tv.
Hi, I'm Deb Harden, host of For Your Information. The goal of our show is to educate and entertain you about all things pets throughout Cleveland County. We have various guests joining me each month to talk about dogs, cats, pigs, whatever kind of pet you can think of. Also each month we will be joined by some furry friends looking for their forever homes. For your information each month right here on C19 TV and online at www.c19.tv.
Won't you come and meet me at the movies? Won't you come and watch a flick?
Hello, welcome back to Meet Me at the Movies. Noel T. Manning II here. Appreciate you spending time with us. You can always email us at info@c19.tv, and we will respond to those in kind. Dr. Robert Kolker is our guest, along with Marsha Gordon. And Marsha Gordon, are you a Dr. Marsha Gordon as well?
I am a Dr. Marsha Gordon,
yes,
and professor at North Carolina State University.
That's right. And when you said you pursued that PhD, I hope that you meant you followed through with it. And
I did. I went all the way.
Well, our 2 guests today are the co-authors for Film, Form, and Culture, the 5th edition. Really happy to have my copy here as well, and I'm glad I got a chance to take a look at it and get it before we get a chance to talk. We have been talking about your love of cinema and your love of bringing this work to life, this rework to life as well. And I'd like for you both to really talk about maybe what you gained from each other from collaborating. You've shared some of that in the context of different filmmakers and things, but I'd love to hear you. Marsha, you're working with a mentor, someone who's meant a lot to you over the years, and Robert working with a former student. I'd love for you to talk about the benefits you both gained from just collaborating with each other.
Keep going. That's what I learned.
Plain and simple. Keep going.
Well, it was actually really fun because one of the things we did is, I would say like, oh, I just saw the new Jafar Panahi film, No Bears. I think it's absolutely amazing, incredibly important, fits in the arc of neorealist traditions, allows us to expand the section on Iranian film. Please see it, and Bob would see something and he would say, okay, I saw this. And so it was a really fun year, basically, of sending films back and forth to each other as we were trying to figure out the content. And, one of the things about writing about film and media is that there's always new stuff, right? There's the keep going. I mean, you have to, if you want to reflect the contemporary state of what's being made, how it's being seen, how people are reacting to it. And so I do think that there's something essential to that. And, I'm actually teaching Introduction to Film this semester, and I'm doing it with the 4th edition. I've always used Film, Form, and Culture, so I'm doing it with Bob's edition because our edition wasn't out yet. And it's been really interesting just to reread the textbook in its last iteration and appreciate, the groundwork that Bob has laid with, again, this beautifully written, rich tapestry of sophisticated thinking about film in relationship to culture, and also really the care with which he lays out the terms. I've always loved the glossary to this book, which is just thorough, easy reference point for, when students are learning, what's a long take, what's mise en scène again, what's high key lighting. I mean, just to have an easy way to look up a term, understand it with illustrations that kind of reference back to, this is a very richly illustrated book. There's hundreds of still images in it. So I've really loved that process of working on it, revising it, then teaching the book one last time in this, in its past iteration before, this new edition has come out.
Oh, I love that. I love, for me, I love the opportunity to be able to engage with students who are interested in cinema and interested in finding out why they may be drawn to a particular director or a particular style of film. So we've all had a chance to do that with students. So what are the things, if there's one thing that you want a student to leave your classroom with, and I know, Robert, you mentioned you've retired, but what was that one thing that you hoped that students who study cinema would gain when they leave that at the end of the semester?
Oh, to look beyond the plot, to look at the formal structure of the film, what's happening visually as well as in the dialogue. What is the camera doing? What is lighting doing? How are the characters staged? And finally, what does the film have to say? And does it say things that other films have said? Is there connection? Is there a way to think through the immediate experience?
Love that.
Yeah, and I mean, I have to say it's just a version of that, but let me give 2 concrete examples from what I've done this semester that also reflects the content of the revised edition of the textbook. I taught Bicycle Thieves, of course, the Vittorio De Sica film, a perfect example of Italian neorealism. I was surprised how much the students just loved the film. And then we kind of took apart the film and to talk about why. What is it about the film that's so appealing and enduring, and how De Sica is taking advantage of real world settings and spending time with working class poor people. And then I taught Wendy and Lucy, the Kelly Reichardt film. I'm a huge admirer of Kelly Reichardt's films. Stars Michelle Williams, a very unadorned Michelle Williams, in a story of a woman and her dog in a very financially precarious situation, and then could trace the lineage, right? Now the students could say oh, these are the things that Wendy and Lucy took from Bicycle Thieves. It's shot on location. There is this, the dog takes the place of the child in terms of something that you feel this, uncomplicated sympathy for. This exploration of somebody who is, one trip away from falling into the abyss of complete hopelessness and economic despair. And so to see the students be able to generate that, right? We study the one, and then later in the semester, they've had some time, we study the other, and I can just say, okay, so if you were to trace a line from Bicycle Thieves to this, what's the line? And they can do it, right?
Wow.
Because we've been studying these things. And I mean, this is slightly a different example because this is, you know, a much more recent film, but I just am teaching Zone of Interest this week, the Jonathan Glazer film. And last week I showed them Night and Fog, the Alan Rene documentary. It was our second documentary of the semester, but I am already imagining the conversations, right, about this important documentary that was made about the Holocaust 10 years after the end of World War II and the way it was representing the Holocaust history, and it was issuing a warning, right?
Yeah.
A warning about vigilance and about our human capacity to forget and the tragedy of that. And then Glazer's film, right, which does not provide any visual representation of the Holocaust, but is also exploring that same idea of remembering and forgetting and becoming complacent and maybe even, you know, well, all of the complex politics of that film. And so those kinds of things are so exciting to me about teaching film and film history, because yes, it's about film. Yes, it's about form, but it's also, as the title tells you, it's about culture.
Yes.
Right. And this is why it's so important that students and people everywhere understand the way film and media work, the way it can manipulate you, the way that it can kind of bring you into its orbit and make you feel things, positive and negative. And so I think that in many ways, a film class is a class also about life,
Yes.
and it's about the world and politics and all of these other things. And I think it's an incredibly important class for students to take.
Awesome. Well, Robert P. Kolker and Marsha Gordon joining us right here on Meet Me at the Movies as we talk about their text, Film, Form, and Culture, edition 5. Really happy to have you joining us today, and do want to give you a chance if you have any final thoughts or final comments you want to make sure you share about this work or about film in general before we wrap today.
I would say that this is a book that people who are not taking film courses, who are just interested in finding out some of the stuff of film, might want to have a look.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to think that one of the best things about this book is it is an introduction, and it is because of the way that it's written and because of its kind of goals and ethos. I think it's a pleasure to read for anyone who cares about learning more about this subject.
Wonderful. Marsha, Robert, thank you both for joining us, and I'd love to bring you back again just to explore your love of cinema, which we touched on. I'd love to bring you back on at some point to discuss those things if you're open to it. And I'm not going to put you on the spot, so you don't have to say yes or no right now. But thanks for joining us, and for all of those audience who are taking time to spend with us, I thank you as well. We all know that there are other things that you could be doing, but when you take 30 minutes out of your day to spend with us, we really do appreciate it, and we want you to know that. For everyone here, the entire cast and crew at Meet Me in the Movies, for C19 TV and for WG, I'm Noel T. Manning II. For Robert and for Marsha for this week, that's a wrap.
They fill you in. We'll tell about the happy and the sad ones. We'll talk about the good ones and the bad ones. Many films to view till we meet again.